Hi, everyone. Welcome to this ProcessMaker 3 training session, which is part of the Beginners Training Series, powered by Diamond. I am your host and trainer, Afe Araram. For our 13th session, we shall be working on the fourth task of our process, which is actually the first task in the expense retirement leg of our cash advance requisition and expense retirement process. At the end of this session, you should know how to create input documents and how input documents are useful to us in our process design, how to add them to our Dynaforms, or alternatively add them as steps to our tasks, and as well answer the question, all these documents that are uploaded by users to forms as they use cases on our processes, where are they stored? So in this case, we shall be referencing ProcessMaker's internal document management system. Let us begin. In business processes, often require supporting documents to aid the users assigned to a task to perform that task. For example, in our cash advance and expense retirement process, we would require users to provide receipts for the expenses which serve as proof of transaction and helps the supervisor and finance officers to ascertain that the transaction indeed took place. Now, these class of documents are referred to as input documents in ProcessMaker. So input documents are basically files or documents that contain information that serve as an input to the process. Sometimes we can call input documents as supporting documents, meaning the supporting documents to a request, okay? Now, input documents can be digital or printed, that is a hard copy. But mostly, digital input documents are uploaded into ProcessMaker, while for printed documents, the user will be asked to provide a description of the documents. So we shall look at how we can create input documents for the receipts that are needed for the expense retirement leg of our demo process. So let's access the process and we'll get to our main toolbox, or also called the process object toolbox. And then we click on input documents and it opens the input documents dialog box. Now, to create an input document, the moment you have this dialog box open, or you click on this create button beside the input documents option in the main toolbox, you get to see the create input document screen. Now, this screen or form allows us to define and configure the behavior of the input documents. So let's now look at each of the fields here. So we have the title. What would be the title of the input documents? And then for the expense retirement leg of our process, we would want to call this receipts. So let's type receipts here. Oh, sorry. Okay, so receipts. We have receipts. And the second field to be filled is the document type. The document type field. And this refers to the type of input document to be created, and the options available are digital. Click on the drop down, then there's printed, and there's digital/printed. Digital documents are expected to be uploaded along with the case, while only a description of the printed document is required. Now, if the printed option or the digital/printed option is selected, you will be shown an additional field to specify the format of the document, whether it is original, legal copy, or copy. So let's see that. If you see now for digital, that's the next field is a description. Or if it is printed, then there's the format where you can select whether it's the original document or a legal copy or a copy of the document, original document that you are describing here. Okay, so the same thing happens if you select digital/printed. This goes there. But now for the case of the expense retirement leg of our process, it's purely digital. The receipts will be scanned and then uploaded to be part of the supporting documents for the request. Now, the next field is description. So here you need to enter a description of the document that will be displayed to the user when requesting the document to be uploaded. This can help the user know what type of document is expected. So here we're going to type digital, so scanned images, digital copies that are scanned images of receipts for items listed in the expense report. Oh, sorry. Okay. Now, the next field is the versioning field. This is used to indicate if versioning should be enabled for the document. If versioning is enabled, then different copies of the input document uploaded for a case will be preserved. If versioning is disabled, new uploads of the input documents for a particular case will overwrite the documents previously uploaded for the case. Versioning is useful when you want to preserve an audit trail of all documents uploaded as the input documents for the case, especially if different users in the life cycle of the case or request can upload input documents. So you want to be able to keep a track of all the input documents that have been uploaded by anyone for a given case at any given point in time. But for this particular demo process, we shall not enable versioning. Then the next is the destination path. This is used to define the path in the inbuilt ProcessMaker document management system that the uploaded documents will be stored. This is useful for organizing documents being uploaded into the system. You will observe that there is a variable selector button beside the field, and this allows us to select the variables to make up the path to store the documents. For example, let's assume that for this demo process, all receipts, we want them stored within the folder, the root folder called expense reports. Something like this. Then, stepping into that parent folder, there will be another folder with folder name case, and then the case number. Let's select original type and select the system variable app number, which represents the case number. Sorry, we need to cut this and put it here. Okay, and then inside the folder, the inner folder, having the folder name that is the case appended to the or concatenated with the case number or app number. We then have another inner folder. So we'll put a slash and then we have receipts. Okay, I have receipts. So that should be able to help us determine or define the path that ProcessMaker should upload the supporting documents or the receipts that are uploaded by users for this particular process. Okay, now the next is what we call input tags. As the name implies, this is used to specify a comma-separated list of tags to associate with the input documents. This can be useful when searching for the document later. The tags can be plain text or gotten from the case variables. So that is why we also have the variable selector button for this field. For the purpose of our demo process, we'll call these expense receipts. Then we can add another tag, receipts. Okay. Now for extensions, the allowed file extensions, this field allows us to restrict the type of files that can be uploaded as the input documents. So if we're expecting receipts to either be an image, then that would be JPG, GIF, or bitmap images, BMP, or PNG, maybe PDFs too for receipts. Now, if you have all these extensions, it's a matter of separating them by commas, and then the input documents, the user will be restricted to uploading only documents that have such file extensions. However, if you want to allow any extension like indicated here, you just leave this like as a dot star. Well, for this particular process we're working on, we would like to have a star.jpg, comma, then a star.jpeg, then a star.png, and then yes, the last one should be PDF, star.pdf. Okay. Now, the next field we're concerned with is the maximum file size. Now, like you can see in the label for the field, use 0 if unlimited. Now, this is a very useful field as well for restricting the size of the document that can be uploaded. Now, it's important to set this to a reasonable limit, but not too large to avoid users uploading files that are very large and then slow down the performance of the system. Now, for us to be able to do this, we can, this field works in conjunction with the unit field to determine the size, the maximum file size. So let's go with megabytes and say, we don't expect a receipt file image to be more than 2 megabytes, okay? So with that, we are good to go and we can save this. The moment we do that, you see that the receipts, the input document object named receipts has been created. You can always use the edit button to edit it, and of course the delete button to delete it. And because it's an object, a process object, you see that it has its own UID, okay? So that is how you can create an input document in ProcessMaker. So next, let's ask ourselves, now that we've created this input document, what do we use it to do, right? So there are basically 2 ways that you can take advantage or make use of an input document object that you have created for your process. The first method is to add that input document to your Dynaform using either a file control or a multiple file upload control. The second main method is to add the input document as a task step. Okay, so let's see how we can do this. If we go back to our playground, remember for one of these tasks here, we had a form A. A form A, let's still see what it looks like. So it looks like this, okay? Now, let's define an input document. So let's create one like we've just done, call it receipts, just to prove a point. And then we have leave it digital. Of course, we are just testing this, so let's leave it as this for now. And then let's call this testing as the path. And let's add the case number as well. Okay. Let's put this as testing. Extensions to use. Let's leave it as any extension. And let's leave it at any size. We're just testing this. Okay. So we save this receipts. Now, first method is to add it to your Dynaform. So if we go to steps, and we did a Dynaform, we could use either the file. This is a deprecated control now. So let's assume we are calling this receipts. For settings, you will need to indicate the input documents. So you can see the moment you click on input documents, remember I clicked on settings. Of course, it's a file type. That is the only data type that's available to this kind of control variable. We click on input document, we select the input document we've created, and we do this. This will be added to the form. So preview now, we're going to have this, right? Okay. Now, that is using a file control, to add an input document to your process via a Dynaform. But let's assume we're not using, because for instance, remember the difference between your file control and your multiple file upload is that this file control allows you to upload just one document, while the multiple file upload control allows you to upload multiple documents, okay? So let's assume for this particular context, we want to use the multiple file upload. So you drag it to your form and you give it a name. Let's call this, say, supporting documents, okay? And of course, you can save it without even going to settings, because it's not in settings that the settings while you are creating the variable, that's not where you indicate the input documents to use. So you can, okay, this already exists. Let's just select it. Okay, so we've already variable. If you go to settings for the control, you see input documents. Sorry, if you go to properties, rather, properties, you see that input documents is one of the properties for a multiple file upload button or upload control. So when you click on this ellipsis button, you see the input documents dialog opens and you're able to select the particular input document object you want to use, or you want to bind that web control on your Dynaform to. Okay. At the moment you do that, you see that the settings, the file extensions, the maximum file size, the size unit, and everything we selected automatically define the properties of the multiple file web control on our Dynaform. And when you preview, it's going to look like this, okay? Remember that we said that there are two main ways that you can add an input document to a task, either via a Dynaform or as a task step. And we've already shown that for a Dynaform, you either use a file control or a multiple file upload control, okay? If you don't want to use a multiple file control, you could add an input document to a task as a step. The difference between these two methods or these two approaches, either as a control on a Dynaform or as a step on a task, is that the users can skip the task step, while you can enforce that supporting documents or input documents are uploaded by making your form, the web control on your form to be required. For this particular use case that you can see on the screen, when you click, you see that this is not required. So this person could select and submit the form and it will go. But if you were to enforce that supporting document, if you have a particular business case or a use case where supporting documents are required, then you can enforce that by making your web multiple file upload or your file upload to be required. And when you have such a scenario, the person is not able to submit without uploading documents first, okay? Now, for the second approach, it will be as part of your steps that you drag that input document onto your assigned elements area. The moment you do that, you can then organize, should the input documents come before your form or come after your form, okay? Now, when you have a situation like this, you could also determine whether you want to, because it's a step, of course, whether you have triggers that should be executed before the input document step or after the input document step. You could do all of that. You could also determine conditions for the step to be visible or not, just like you do for a Dynaform. And you could determine your conditions using even variables that are part of your case or part of your process. That is why the variable selector button is right here. Okay. Then clicking on properties, clicking on edits will take you to editing the settings or the properties for the input document object as well. Okay. Now, let's see how this will work as a step. Remember that, let's see what is the assignment rules for this again, employees. So we could start a case. Let's go to our testing browser or our browser we use for testing. Let's log out. Okay. Let's sign in as Anu Bello. And can start a new case on our tutorial playground. And when he does that, and select, let's select, Adiola Adeoye. And it's forced to select, let's see if we can have any image or any documents. I think I have one on my desktop. Let's go to our training resources, others, and let's see, is there any documents? Yeah. Let's take these PDF. So you can do that. And then let's submit it. You see the next step, it becomes our input document step. And because we've already uploaded our documents on the form, and that multiple file control is tied to these receipt input document. That's why you are seeing this one here. But you could add more by clicking on the attach, and you can add comments, and you can choose a document. Let's add an Excel file. And then when you just say expenses from ABC, receipts from ABC Cement PLC. Do that, it will add it to the list of documents. So you could attach more. And while the step looks like this, the user can attach more input documents. And especially for situations where you want to use the input documents to collate or collect uploads from different users along the flow of the process, then an input document as a step can be very useful, such that as it goes from one task to the other, you have the input document as a step across multiple tasks. And then as users encounter the input document step, they could download whatever has been uploaded by previous users and see what those documents are. They could also attach new ones as well. Okay, so that's then when you click on next, of course, it takes you to your assignments screen showing you the next task as well as the next user. So that's how input documents can be added to a task as a step in that task. Okay, so let's continue this. And then I want to now show you how do we view documents in ProcessMaker's DMS. Okay, now if I go back to our designer window, this is the admin, or this user has admin privileges or the admin role on this ProcessMaker instance. And so if you go to the home screen and you check the section on the left of the screen, you see that there is an option called Documents, right? And when you click on Documents, you see that the screen is now broken into two parts, or split into two parts. There is a part that tells about the directory structure, and then the one to the right tells us, gives us or shows us the content of the selected folders or directory on the left. Now you see that testing is coming from the fact that when we were creating let's go back to just remind you quickly. I know you've not forgotten, but let's quickly see. Within our tutorial playground, we created an input document. Remember, we call it receipts. Or so as not to confuse the one we've done for our main demo process, let's call this supporting docs, okay? And then remember, we said the destination path should be testing and then the case number, okay? Now, coming back here under our home window, and we go to documents, you see that there's a testing folder here already. And when you click on it, you see that there's case 21, which is the case we raised just now under our playground process. And when you click on that, you see that the two files were uploaded here. So this is ProcessMaker's document management system, or DMS. And it's users who have a folder permission that are able to see the contents of the internal DMS from their home screen. Let me explain again. Now, we said this is an admin user, and the admin user is able to see the DMS, okay? But what of a regular user, an operator? Remember, for when we're talking about rules, we said there are 3 default rules in ProcessMaker: the admin, the operator, and the manager. Now, going back to this other window where we are logged in as Anu Bello is an operator, and you can see in his own home screen, there's no folder options. There's no document option for him to be able to view the DMS, right? But we have Adeola Adeoye as a manager. How do I know that? We'll go to manager and look at the users. There's Adeola Adeoye, right? So let's log in here let's log out and then log in as Adeola Adeoye. You see that as a manager, the manager role gives Adeola Adeoye and all users who have given that manager role access to the DMS. That's why Adeola can also see the DMS and see what we could see just now from the admin profile, correct? Okay, now how do you get your users in your organization to be able to view the DMS, even as operators? It's all about adding that permission for them. So let's go back to our admin profile and go to rules, select operator, and click on permissions. And when we do that, click on edit permissions, then look for folders all. So this permission allows those who have it to view folders. So we add it to the list of assigned permissions for the operator role, and then we go back. Now let's sign in again. Let's sign out as Adeola and sign in as Anu Bello that could not see the documents, the DMS a while ago. Now you see, voila, we have documents here. And Anu Bello as an operator on this instance can now view the documents that have been uploaded, the input documents, and even the output documents. In our next session or next video or lesson, we shall be talking about output documents. And you see that you could also add output documents for a process or a case into ProcessMaker's DMS, okay? So this is how this a user can see the internal DMS of ProcessMaker. So next, let's now move on to actually working on our process, our demo process. So let's go to our cash advance and retirement an expense retirement process. And remember, we just created an input document called receipts, and we defined the allowed file extensions and the rest, correct? Okay. Now we need to, if you remember, we've already defined the assignment rules for each of the tasks in the expense retirement leg of our process. You see, this is supervisor, and for our last task, you see that it's a self-service and finance officers. Okay. We've also set the properties of the gateway that stands between the supervisor task and any available routes. Either it's rejected back to the employee or is approved to the finance officers. Okay. So what we now need to do is to create, if you check the steps here, you would see that there is no Dynaform. So we need to add a Dynaform step to this task. Same goes for the supervisor task, and same goes for the finance officer task. We need to add all of that. Okay. So let's go to our Dynaforms, and I think it's nice that we create, since we have a cash advance requisition initiation form, we should create an expense retirement initiation form. We'll say Dynaform for the cash advance requisition and expense retirement process to handle expense retirement initiation. Okay, that should be sufficient. And now let's open it. Now, we remember that when we started talking about our demo process from previous sessions, we said that the business gave us a manual form that they use for their expense retirement or expense reporting. So this is that form. So we want to create a Dynaform that looks like this, or that has these fields. May not necessarily look like this, but contains the fields that will allow the form to capture data from users the same way that this form can be used to capture data from users manually. Okay. So let's start. The first thing we need to do is to add our title, H1. So dragging the H1 control, and of course, the ID should be form title. And here we'll put expense retirement. I'll keep on spelling that wrongly. We'll say report initiation. Okay, so we have that. The next thing we now need to do is to add, look at what we have here, a section for expense details. Okay, so to add that section, we'll add a H2, an H2 web control, and this will be section expense underscore details. And like, remember I told you, I like using uppercase characters for my sectional headings. And so for this, we'll call it expense details. Okay. Now, what's the next thing that we should do? We want to have the, sorry, this should be report date, the report date and the employee name, then the employee department. And we should also add the amount advanced. Okay, so let's break this down into 2 columns. And we can have a text box for the employee name. Remember, we already have employee name as part of this process coming from our cash advanced requisition leg. So this is employee name. We can leave the label as is, and it should be required. And we expect the system to fill this in, so we'll disable this. Then for our report date, we need a date time control. So drag that there, and then we name this report dates. When we save, the system should be able to populate this field. And of course, we want the date format to be DD, MM, YYYY. Okay? And we need it to be disabled because the system should be able to fill in that as well. Okay. Then the next row, we divide again into 2 equal columns, 6 and 6. We'll need the employee department. So we drag a text box control. Employee department already exists as part of our variables. So we select that. And of course, it should be required, and the system should be able to fill this in. So we make it disabled. So for amount advanced, why do we need amount advanced? If it's a situation or a request that started as a cash advance requirement, a cash advance requisition request, then you know that there is an amount that would have been advanced by finance, right? So that is why we need it to be on this field, because this form will be used as the expense retirement initiation task. It could either be a continuation from the cash advance requisition request or the start of a fresh expense retirement request in itself. Okay, so we need the amount advanced field. But in this case, remember, we have the amount advanced. Let's see, let me show you what I'm talking about. So the text, and we are using string. And why? Because remember, we already have, if you type advanced, there's the amount advanced that is a float field, and then amount advanced commas that is a string. So this is the one we want to use, so that it has a 1000 separator that makes it the user experience okay. So we have that. All we need to now do is remove the commas from the label of the field. Now, this is not going to be required. The system should be able to populate this if at this task it's a continuation of a cash advance requisition request, then the system will populate this field. However, if the request is a fresh expense retirement case, then this field should be empty. This field should be empty. So that's why we are disabling it. If we view what we have now, it's looking like this, okay? Now, the next we want to do, again, whether it's an expense report that is a continuation of a cash advance requisition request, or is an expense report that is a fresh request on its own, meaning the employee spent his own money, and so he wants a reimbursement. And so the person using this will need to populate an expense reason, a reason for the expense, like we had for our cash advance requisition leg. So we need to drag in a text area here. And remember, we already had expense reason. So we select that. We can say reason, change the label to reason for the expense. Now, this will be a required field. And for now, we'll make it disabled. It will be disabled if it's a continuation of a cash advance requisition request, because it would have already been filled from the cash advance requisition leg. However, if it's a fresh expense retirement request, then we expect the user to be the one to fill this field. But for now, let's disable it, because we shall be using JavaScript to determine whether it should be disabled for editing or enabled for editing. So the next thing we need to do, we need to set the property of this field to 2 rows because this is too large. Let's go down. Select 2 rows. Then we'll do this. Okay, so we are making progress. The next thing we need to do, we've been able to target this guy. We have this down, we have this down, we have this down, we have the dates down, and we have amount advanced down. So we now need a grid to hold the expense breakdown, So I'll create another section using, of course, my H2, my subtitle control, and what I'll call this section expense underscore breakdown, expense breakdown. Okay. And I will now add a grid control. So we need to add a grid control, and I'll call it, I like prefixing my grid controls with the prefix grid. So I'll call it grid expense. No, let's call it expense breakdown. Oh, sorry. Expense breakdown. Yeah, so this is okay. Now, if you look at this preview, you'll see that it has this grid title here. I don't want that. So with the grid control selected, I'm going to remove the title. I want it responsive, and I want the users to be able to add a row or delete a row. Okay, so what should be part of our grid table? We need a description, item amount, and whether a receipt is attached for the item that is being listed on the grid. So, which means I would need a text area for my description. I would need a text box for my amount, and I will need a checkbox for the user to indicate whether they attached a receipt or not. So going to the first one, I would call the ID of this item underscore description, and the label will be description. Okay, then I will set the number of rows to 1, and basically the column width will make this, let's see 30 first. We'll check, we'll preview, and then we know. Then of course this should be required. We can even put a placeholder and say item description. Okay, this next one is for the amount. So ID of this will be item underscore amount, and the label will be amount. It should be required as well. And then we want to put a hint. No, we don't need a hint, but we need to validate this field because it's text field, and we don't want people to type in James Bond there. We need amount values. So we'll come to that, but first, okay, let's make the column width for this to be 20, and then the last one will be, let's call the ID item receipts, and we'll say, what did they call it on the form? Receipt attached. Okay, receipt attached. I'll do that, and let's its width be, let's use 20 and see. Let's preview. This will not be required, of course, because an item can have a receipt or not, then but amount is required. Then we have validation left to do on the amount, but let's preview our form now and see how it is. Okay. we can see that this makes sense. So the column sizes are okay. And the beautiful thing about responsive grid is that as the width of the window reduces, it reduces as well, as you can see here. And if it increases, it increases. But this is only very useful for when you have few columns on your grid. By the time you have up to 10 or more columns, it no longer makes sense for your grid to be responsive. Instead, it's better for you to make it static and then define. In that way, you then define the width of all of this. So this would become something like 300, and we can call this one maybe 150. And then for a static, then this one we can say maybe another 150. And let's preview this and see. So this is like this now. We can change those 150. We can change this 300 for description to say 400. And then this one to 200 and this to 200. So let's quickly do that and see. So we come here, we can make this 400 for static. Oh, sorry. Select again, go down. So that's 400. For amount, we said we shall make it 200. And then for receipts, we make this one, whether 180 or 200, anyone. Okay, let's make it 180. When you preview, you have this. Now, when this is reducing, you see that that is static. The grid is static. The sizes remain the same. So having the property, the responsive property of your grid, your layout property of your grid to be static is useful when you have, let's say, more than 7 or 8 or 9 fields or columns in your grid. Making your grid to be the layout to be responsive for such a situation will end up when the screen space is small, then the width of your columns will be very, very small. So in such a scenario, it's better for you to make your layout static. So irrespective of the size of the screen, the width of each column remains static, and the user can scroll to the left, as we can see here. Let me preview this so that you see again. When the screen size becomes smaller, the user can scroll to the right or to the left. Okay. So we have that down. And as you can see, the user is able to add new rows, and the user is able to delete existing rows. Okay. I think we are making progress. We are making progress. So let's come to our expense initiation step, and then add. We've not finished building our initiation form, but let's add it, and let's see what we have. Okay. Let's add validation to our amount columns, because the way it is now, the user could, instead of typing, let's say 1,250, the user could just type Jane Doe, and our form will just take it like that. Now remember what earlier spoken about regex for amount fields, and we're going to use this one for amount values having no commas. And I think we have it here. We're going to copy this. Copy that. And come to our amount field and go to validate and paste the pattern there and put a validation error message that the only valid inputs are amount figures, something like that. Okay, so let's preview again. This time around, if we type 1,250.54, it will accept. But if we type Jane Doe, then it's going to validate the field for us. Okay, so that covers that. Now, what else do we have on our forms to add? We've been able to handle this grid. The next we want to add would be the total amount spent. So the total amount spent doesn't need to appear on the form. So I think it would be better to make this a hidden variable. That's the best way to put it, a hidden variable. So for this, I would be I would use a hidden variable. So let's split this into 4 sections. Oh, sorry, 3 equal columns having size 4. So remember now that coming from the cash advance requisition leg, we would have this amount advanced commas we've used here, and amount advanced that is a float field. So I need that to be a hidden variable here as well. So bring down a hidden variable and select amount advanced. There's a reason for that, we shall soon see. Then for is approved for our supervisor task, we will need is approved. So that would be another hidden variable. So select is approved. And now to handle, excuse me, to handle the total amount spent, I want to call that amount expensed. Amount expensed. I like to call it amount expensed. So let's do that. It's going to be a hidden field as well. We'll create it amount expensed. So we'll be needing this as much as possible. So I'm going to come down here and paste it. Save this. As much as we'll also be needing this amount advanced for some JavaScript logic we need to add to the form. So I will have that as well. And then the one with commas, let's make this always on top. And then the ones with commas as well, I will need it. Okay. Now, if we've added that, what is the next we need to do? We need the amount to reimburse and amount to refund. These two are calculated based on whatever the user inputs here and whatever was the amount advanced originally, if it started as a cash advance requisition case, okay? So I need 2 fields. We use string because I need them to have commas. So two string text boxes. So let's do that. So divide these into 2 equal columns and drag this one here. And for this, I'll call it amount to reimburse. So let's see. Amount to reimburse. So copy that. Paste it here. Amount to reimburse. And then change the, what label did they use here? Amount to be reimbursed. So we can make it amount to be reimbursed. Okay? It's the system that should impute or populate this field, so that should be disabled. The next one we want to add is the amount to be refunded. So we'll call the variable amount to refund. So let's copy that. Let's add this here. Let's add the variable. Mark you is a string. And the system should be the one to populate this field as well. So just only change the label to amount to be refunded. Yeah. Okay. Let's preview now. So it looks like this. Now, for the receipts that will be attached, we need a multiple file control. And we'll go to our web controls, drag in a multiple file upload, and we'll call this supporting documents. And we'll save it. So this for now, let's make it required. We'll decide whether it should be required or not based on whether there are receipts attached on the grid or not. And then we are bind it to our receipt input document object. Okay. So with this, if we preview now, it's looking like this. It's looking like this. Okay. Now, the next we'll do is to handle this reimbursement finance section. For that, we need the amounts reimbursed, amounts refunded, then the payment mode, and then the transaction reference. So let's quickly add that. So we need to add a section for finance. So let's give it the ID section underscore finance. And for the title, let's put finance reimbursement / refund details. Okay. And then, of course, the next row will make it 6 and 6. And then we want the amount refunded. Do we already have that? No, so we need to create it. Amount refunded, as well as amount reimbursed. So those are the two we need. So create the first one. We need to also create the second one on the next row. That would be amount, should be capital R for reimbursed. Amount reimbursed. Okay, let's copy that and create another text box. Okay, I'll save this. So this should be required for now. Let's disable them. This will be required as well, and we will also disable them. Okay. Now for we need to add a radio button. We'll use a radio button to simulate this. We use a radio button. Then we use a text field for the transaction reference. So in other words, what we need is payment mode. and then transaction reference. Okay, so let's do the first one. Let's go back to our form and let's add a radio button group here and call it payment mode. And let's go to the settings, and we need it to be, the first one will be cash, and the second one will be check. Sorry. Okay. For cash, let's use the key to be CSSH. And for check, let's use it to be CHQ. Okay, that's well defined. And then we can save this. So for payment mode, it may be required or not. So we'll use JavaScript to determine that. So we'll just make this required for now. And then for the transaction reference, we'll need a text field as well. So we add this. It may be required or not. So just make it required first on the property, and then we can use JavaScript to make it required or not required based on the context we're trying to define. So also disable this for now. And if you look, you have this. Okay, so everything is looking good. Next, we want to do is to add our comment log. We already have a comment log subform. So it's a matter of dragging this subform here. And we select comment log. Yeah. So once you do that, we'll have this. Then we need to add a submit button so that the users are able to submit the form. So the ID, we make the ID to be submit_BTN. And that will be the same thing here, submit_BTN. And for the label, we'll put submit request. Okay. Or submit reports rather. Reports. Okay. Okay, let's save. Now, the next thing we need to do is add our sign-off and approvers. This or the sign-off prepared by, approved by, processed by. However, we don't have a subform for that yet. So we need to create the subform for that. Now, if we go back to our Dynaforms, we see that we already have an approval sign-ups for the cash advance requisition leg. So we need to create one for the expense retirement leg. So I'm going to open this up and I'm going to export it. Okay. And then going back to our Dynaforms, let me quickly get a description of this guy from the property. So this now will be to hold sign-off approval related fields for the cash advance requisition leg of the process. So I need to now copy what I have here, save this, and then I can create the subform expense retirement approval sign-offs. So I can paste this and change this to the expense retirement leg. So it becomes subform for the cash advance requisition and expense retirement process to hold sign-off approval related fields for the expense retirement leg of the process. So save and open now. and then import that I already have here. But things are going to change, of course, because for our sign-up employee, we'll now add ER to differentiate it from the original sign-off employee. So we're going to copy this, copy it because I will need it, and then remove, combine the variable, say yes, then click on this ellipsis to create a new one, paste what I've copied and add ER to it. We are good to go, right? We'll come to the labels later. For the date and time, this date time employee, I'll copy it, combine the variable, then I'll use this to select or create a new variable. This time I'm creating one. So I add ER there and I save. Then for my supervisor, I copy the sign-off supervisor variable name, combine it from the original one, and create a new one for this field. And I'll append ER as a suffix to that. Same goes for the date time supervisor. Copy this, combine the variable, and I'm able to create the new one and add ER to the name. Then for the finance, sign off finance, I would combine the variable so that I am able to create the new one to which I will append ER. Same goes for the date time finance field. Combine it from the original variable and then click on the ellipsis button so that I'm able to create or select a new variable. This time I'm creating a new one by appending ER to the name, and I'm good. So all of these, of course, needs to be, the labels will be date and time. Date and time. So all of this not needed. So I can copy this now and then come here, and that is corrected. The last date time too is corrected. Okay. Now for the labels for the sign-off fields, here I'll put expense. Well, I'll say prepared by, and this should be approved by, and this will be processed by, as it's here. Prepared by, approved by, processed by. Okay. Now remember that we had some JavaScript on the form before that would allow just the first row to show, and the others only show when they have a value. So we will need to go to JavaScript. So for the supervisor field, remember now that we added ER, so it's a matter of adding ER here, ER here, ER here, ER here, ER here, ER here. So this should work now. So we should see only one row now. So this is working as it should. So let's go back to our ER initiation form. And we are now primed to add our approval sign-off subform for our ER leg. So when we preview now, remember that had the external libraries, and that's why our form now looks like this. So this looks good. Yeah, this looks good. Now, a couple of JavaScript stuff we need to do, but for us to be able to know what field to address, I would prefer that we do some testing. Let's go to where we do our testing. and log in as Anu Bello. You see that we already have a case coming from the cash advance requisition leg of the process. And the current task, as you can see, is employee reports expense. Okay. Now, if we open this case, remember that we've added the form to the task. So, which means if we open the case, this existing case, this will load. And as you can see, there is no report date. There's no report date that needs to be populated, right? Okay, so that's that. But what if it were starting as an expense retirement request? So let's go to new case and take this and open a new case for just expense. You see, the employee name is empty, employee department is empty, even report date too is empty. Of course, we expect amount advance to be empty, but the user should be able to give a reason for the expense he wants to report, because this is not coming from the cash advance requisition leg. So let's address them one by one. So the first one, let's go to our inbox and open the one coming from the cash advance requisition leg. So first thing we need to address is the report date. The report date needs to be addressed. The report date needs to be addressed. Then, okay, let's quickly do that. Let's see if we can do that. So go back to our designer. For our initiation form for our cash advance, we had, let's expand up. We had set case owner, we had fetch employee details, and we had set case constants. Okay. So if a new case can start, a new request can start at this task, then we should make use of the set case owner, the set case constants, the fetch employee details that we had before. But we now need to modify what we already have here so that it works well. So first of all, let's disable these ones by adding this condition that we know will never be true. 1 == 2 and 1 == 2. So let's attend to this first trigger first and ensure that is well set. So what do we have in the trigger? We see that this sets the case owner UID and the employee email. So what happens if the case at this, the request at this expense report initiation task is a request coming from the cash advance requisition leg? It means these values are already populated. However, if it's a request starting at the expense retirement leg, then these values will be empty. So we need to now inform the process to only run this trigger when the case owner UID is empty. So we need to copy this case owner UID, copy it. Let's cancel this, come to the condition and add this condition. Case owner UID is equal empty. So an empty set of quotation marks, we save that. However, there's something else I want us to see. We see that this same trigger was what was controlling the request date. What was controlling the request date. Now, if this trigger, the way it is now, should only fire or be executed when case owner UID is empty, then it means that if it's a fresh request starting at the expense retirement the first initiation task of the expense retirement leg, then it will go to populate request date. But we're not using request dates for the expense retirement, we're using report dates. So it means it's no longer convenient for this line to be here. So we're going to cut this out of this. We no longer need it here. So we'll save this. We're going to put, let's keep this start code somewhere first, and we'll come back to it. Now that we've addressed what should be in this first trigger, and it should only fire when the case owner UID is empty, go back to where we are testing what we're testing. This is something coming from the cache. This is a request coming from the cache advanced requisition leg. So when we reload frame, we see nothing has changed. Anu Bailey is already populated before, so it's not going to change. But let's go to the draft case that is if we started on the expense link. Once you double click on that and we open it, the question now would be, is the case owner UID there? It should. It's the employee email already there too? It should. So how do we know? How do we know whether it's fired now? Remember, this should populate case owner UID and employee email. So let's check. Is case owner UID now copy? Let's die and dump a variable. Oh, sorry, it will no longer fire because it's already populated. So we will need this somewhere else. Let's create a debug trigger. Let's call it a debug trigger, ZZZ debug. And then paste this here. Okay. And go back to our steps for the first task and bring our ZZ debug here. Okay. So this, if we reload frame now, we see that it is populated already. Okay. So that means what we have done, our logic here is working. So remove the debug trigger. The next we need to address will be the set case constants. Okay. Remember, it's not firing yet because we put a condition that will never be true here. So let's now review the logic we have inside and know what changes need to be made. Here, we are setting the login label that if it's the cache advance is the initiation task. So we're using going by the task UID now. If it's the initiation task of the cache advanced requisition leg, then we are setting the case link URL by using a switch function. This will be a good place to add our request date that we copied out earlier. So let's go back to where we kept that line of code. And then let's cut it. Then we'll come down here. If it's the initiation leg, so this now will be initiation or CARO leg initiation. So what should happen? So it should only feel if we paste this, this is not really okay, because it means every time this trigger fires, it will be updating the request date. So what we now need to do is put if, let's remove all these parts, we don't need them. We'll say if request date itself is equal to empty, then what should it do? We should set request date as equal to get current date. That's that. Okay. So this is for the Sorry. Let's continue editing. So this is for the cache. The cache advanced region leg initiation. What of for the expense retirement leg initiation? Then we would have something like this. So set the date the cache advance requisition request was initiated. So we'll have something similar. Copy this. We can come and put this here. So this time around, you'll be set the date the expense retirement report was initiated. So this time around, instead of request dates here, we would be having report dates. Report date is already a variable we registered. So we'll copy this and put here. Okay, so these handles are request dates for us now, and we should be fine. It should be fine. Now, you can save this and remove this impossible condition from here. Save this and remove the impossible. So this time around, this trigger addresses our report dates. So let's see if it works. Go back to where we are testing, and if we reload frame, we see that the report date is now here. If we check the other existing case in our inbox, that's from the cache advance requisition leg, you see that report date is here too now. Okay, so let's go to the third trigger that we have placed an impossible condition. Let's see what needs to be addressed there as well. Now, this is just to fetch the employee name, the employee department, and the supervisor email. So it's going to still be the same. It's also going to be the same. It means if the request is coming from the cache advance requisition leg, then these three variables will already be populated with values. However, if if the request starts at the initiation task of the expense retirement leg, then these values will be empty. So one way to indicate or control when this trigger should execute or not is when employee name is empty. So we'll copy this and set the condition here to be this trigger should only fire when the employee name is equal an empty string. Okay. So remember where we're testing, this was an existing case. Now let's go to a fresh case for the expense leg. So when we open this now, you see that the employee name and the department is populated. Now, for a fresh case at the expense retirement leg, we expect that the amount advanced is empty, but the user should be responsible for typing a reason for their expense. So we'll need JavaScript to handle this. We need our JavaScript to handle this. So let's go to, let's see if we can commandeer some of the JavaScript logic we used on this form. Just copy everything here, and we can paste it in our destination form and remove the aspects or sections we don't like or we're not going to use. So yeah, we need this one. We don't need this. We don't need this one too. So we'll remove this function and this other function. We need the document store ready. We need that. So what we don't need the cleave. We don't need this. We remove the cleave function. So yes, what field should we allow for editing? The expense reason is the field we should allow for editing. Okay. Then, what fields do we want to disable validation for? At this task, we want to disable validation for amount refunded, amount reimbursed, payment mode, and transaction reference. So let's get that done. So amount refunded, let's copy that. Then amount reimbursed, let's copy that. Then two more. So let's copy this and paste two more of it. Next one will be payment mode. And then transaction reference. Then we don't have any label here for acknowledgement, so we don't need this. Then there's some, okay, let's see where this takes us first. Is there any other thing? Form submission. Yeah, when we're submitting the form, since we already use it a lot, we don't need this regular JavaScript confirm dialog. So to just then we change the title to expense retirement reports. So if you look at what you have here, says, do you want to pass in submit? When we go up, do you want to submit this form? So let's see how this is. We save this for now. Then go to where we are doing our testing and reload frame. Okay. You see that expense now is open. And when you go down, these are disabled. But we would love to put these two radio buttons on the same line. So if you were to inspect elements here now, sorry, let's put it down. Okay. If we inspect elements here, okay, we see that the class is PM Dynaform control radio lists. Okay. Now there's this div.radio, and this is where you see that it's a block. Let's see. So that doesn't work. I think there is a class for radio inline. Yeah. So this class, we need to activate this radio inline class. Okay, so let's see how we can do that. But remember, while we are trying to do that for the radio group, button group, this is open for editing. Now, if we check our already existing case, this tool that's already populated is also open for editing. This is not good at all because it means that the user can change the reason they had imputed during the the cash advance requisition leg. So we need to find a way of controlling or determining when this field should be open for editing and when it should not. So it should be open for editing if it's a fresh request, meaning the case is not coming from, it's not the request coming from the cash advance requisition leg. And we know when a case is coming from the cash advance requisition leg, that there will already be an amount advanced value. So remember now, that's the reason why we have to put our amount advanced field as a hidden control on the form. So we are going to be using this to create some stuff, a condition. So copy this and go to JavaScript. So here, what do we want to do now? We'll say if, and what's the condition? If the value of get value, if the value of our amount advanced is equal to empty, so we are targeting the amount advanced field, and we say if it's equal to empty, then this should be disabled. So let's cut it, and then we can put it here, paste it here. So that should solve that. Now for our payment mode that we want to add a radio or activate the radio inline class, we'll copy this, and then let's come here and say format the radio control, and then we'll paste this. But this time around, we'll find where it's a div that has the class radio, and then we'll add class. And what are we adding in the class? Radio inline. Okay. Let's save and let's preview first from here. Which is that because there's no value in an amount advanced, this is open for editing. And if you go down, this is now on a straight line. Okay. Now let's check where we are testing an existing request that's coming from the cache advanced requisition leg. So let's reload frame. Sorry, reload frame. So something is wrong. We need to check what is wrong with our condition. This is not working yet. We need to go back and check. This is working. So what could be the issue with our condition that should make this not editable? Let's quickly check what we must have done wrong. We're saying if the amount advanced dot get value is equal to nothing. This looks okay. So what could be the value of our amount advanced? Will it be empty? So let's console.log what we have here. So copy this. And let's put amount advanced is equal to, and then concatenate it with this value. Okay, let's save. Let's come now here where we are noticing the issue. Let's go to our console, clear, and now let's reload frame. So it is empty. Why should it be empty? Seems to be an issue with the amount advanced. Shouldn't be empty. Okay. Let's use our amount advanced commas then, since that is, let's go to JavaScript and add use the commas field instead. That should solve the issue. You can check later why our mount advanced is an empty field. So reload free. So yes, so once our mount advanced is not an empty field, then this is disabled. But however, if it's a fresh expense report, then to be enabled for editing. Okay. Now you will notice something that let's see, why is this not disabled? This should be disabled. This should be disabled. Let's go to our form and see. Oh, it's not, so we need to disable it. Disabled, save. Let's reload frame. Yeah, so disabled, all these fields should be disabled at the initiation task of the expense retirement leg. The user should focus on this grid and then this reason for expense if it is a fresh case or a fresh expense retirement case. Okay. Now, the next thing to do is this is what we expect, that as the user types in amounts here, the system should sum up the amount. So if it types 1,000 and then types 500, then the system should be able to sum the amounts that have been typed here and pass that into the amount expensed hidden variable. And then use that with whatever value is in the amount advanced to calculate what is the amount to be reimbursed and what is the amount to be refunded. So we need to use JavaScript to handle all of that. So let's quickly go to JavaScript. This time around, we need an event handler. So I'm going to copy this comments block and reuse it. So let's paste. Okay, and this time around is an event handler. And I want to do what? I want to evaluate the amount to reimburse or refund. Okay, so we have that. So I'm creating a function and call the function compute reimburse refund. Now, I want this function to work as a set on a function that will be called when there is a set on change event on the form. Yeah. So if we go to wiki.processmaker and we search for, so this is JavaScript methods. Let's look for the one on the form. Let's see, is there anyone on the form? Yes, so form set on change. If we go there, so is this method sets the change on change event handler is called when the value of any input field in the Dynaform changes. And it takes this format, you see. We can do it like this as an anonymous function, or we define the function and then we call this, right? Okay, so let's go with this approach. Let's go with that approach. Okay. You can come back here and read up on this documentation later. For now, I'll go back here. We want to use that approach. So the first thing that we need to do is target the form using jQuery, and then I'll do dot set on change, right? And what set on change do I want to do? This function, copy it and paste it here. Okay. So we continue what we have here. We can now put the name of the function, the field ID, new value parameter, old value parameter. Okay. So in that light, I'm going to come here and I'll put field ID, we put new value and old value. Sorry, it should be old. Okay. Okay. So now let's now write what will be in the function. So I will target the amount column on the grid. Now coming back to our, we'll see that if it's just a text field or an input field that is not on the grid, we would put if the field ID is equal to the ID of the field. Okay. So it will be different if we are addressing something that is on a grid, right? So what are we going to do? We'll say, before we target, we go, let's say, if field ID, the field ID dot search, if the element on the form that is being addressed or where the change is taking place is our grid, then we need a dot search, and we'll put this as, sorry, as our condition. So what are we searching per se? Put a pattern. Let me write it out because it's looking very tiny there. So I want to go for a pattern. And in this pattern, I want to address the grid expense breakdown. So grid expense breakdown, that is the name of our grid. And then we need to escape these square brackets. So I'm going to escape them here and escape them here. Okay, so this is the pattern that I need to search for, or I need the code to search for. Copy. So we can come back here and paste. Okay, so if this is equal to 0, okay, that's equal to 0, then okay, so we target the amount column on the grid, and I would say val amount, let's do the amount, let's get the amount advanced first. Amount advanced is equal to get value amount advanced if the amount advanced get value has a value, if it has a value, then it will be the same thing. But if it is empty, then we should set it to 0. Now, whatever it's gotten, I want to pass float all of it. Something like that. Then what will be the total expense? Total expense. So this should be a new variable too. So var total expense will be equal to, I want to get the total amount on the grid. And if we look for JavaScript for grid, let's search grids, search wiki for grids, and then let's take grid control. And we're looking for JavaScript in grids. Okay, so get summary. So get the value of the summary function of the selected column. Okay. So which means how is it even used? I didn't get that. So we use jQuery to target the grid. Then we call the get summary method and pass in the ID of the column that we are interested in. So in other words, it would be total expense is equal to, so we use jQuery to target the grid. It's grid expense breakdown. That's the ID of the grid. And then we call the dot get summary method. And we pass in the ID of the column. Remember, we call it item underscore amount. Okay. So now that we have that, the total expense, then we need to set it into our amount expensed. Remember now, there's a hidden variable called amount expensed. So let's address that. Let's target it, amount expense. Yeah. So if we copy this, to amount expense dot set value. And what do we want to set the value to? Is the total expense. But remember now that this total expense will not have commas. We not have commas. So remember we have a numbers utils library. Numbers utils library. If you check, go to this PC, go to the workflow folder of your ProcessMaker installation. And let's go to our JavaScript where we have our libraries. If we open this in VS Code, let's open. Okay, so there's a function to words, and there's a function number with commas. So numbers with commas, you only pass in the number to it. Okay, so let's copy that. Let's copy that. So we'll call the numbers to commas function and pass in total expense. Pass in total expense so that the number now has commas in it. Okay. Then the difference now, call a variable called diff. Difference will be equal to amount advanced minus total expense. So this is where we now say, if the difference is greater than 0, so which means if the amount advanced is greater than the total expenditure or total expense, then the employee will need to refund some amount to the organization. So that's why we'll then do this. If diff is greater than 0, then we'll set amount to reimburse. Amount to reimburse will be 0. Let's copy that. Amount to reimburse will set value to be 0, while the amount to refund will be that difference. Amount to refund will be set to that difference. But remember now, we need the difference to have the value to be shown on the field, on the form, should have commas. So we'll call these numbers with commas function again and pass to it the diff value. Okay. However, if the difference is less than 0, it means the employee needs to be reimbursed. So we add an else block. And this time around, it's copy this, paste it here. But this time around, it will be exchange what should be there. So this will be 0. And then this one will be this. However, remember now, if diff is less than 0, then the value will be negative. So we'll then call on the JavaScript library function called math. So math dot the absolute method, then we'll convert diff to an absolute value before passing it to the numbers with commas function to add comma the 1,000 separator to it. So this should be it. This should be it. Okay, let's see. Save. Let's come down here and reload frame. Okay, there's something that we have missed. So let's check our console. What is the issue? Clear and then reload frame again. So it says there's a problem in line 119. Line 119. Okay, and that's coming from our I think we missed something. Let's go back. Let's go back to our form. Everything was okay until we added this set on change. This opening brace is not closed. So I think that's where the problem is. It's not closed. Okay. So this one, okay, so that's the problem. So we need to add another closing brace so that this one closes this one down and this one closes one. Okay, so that should solve it. Save and let's reload frame. So solves the issue. Okay. So now our mount advanced is empty. So if this person says I spent 1,000 for my first item, you see something now that these two fields ought to be populated, but it's not. So something is wrong with that code again. Let's go and check what the problem is. Did we use the right name for our grid? Our grid is grid expense breakdown. Okay, let's copy it and ensure that is what we are targeting here. Grid expense breakdown, that's correct. Then here again, grid expense breakdown, that is correct. And then we are calling this function when there is a set on change. Sorry, we're not supposed to have put the name of the function in quotes. That is a mistake. So let's save and let's reload frame. Okay, so first line item spent 1,000. Okay, you see that there's a problem here already. Why? Because we've not added the sum function to this column. So the summary, get summary line we wrote is not working. This get summary is not working. Why? Because we've not set the property of that column to have a function called sum. So let's save that and then reload frame again and see whether that solves the issue. Okay, so we can see the summation there now. So if the person says, the user says, I spend 1,000 for my first line item, you see the sum is 1,000. So it needs to be reimbursed 1,000 because they did not do any cash advance. So if you had a second item, you spend 850 and 50.50, the sum becomes 1,850. So you can see that. So it needs to be reimbursed. So that is working. Now let's check an existing case. You know, we had an issue with this where the amount advanced commas is this, but the amount advanced is a hidden variable that somehow is empty. We need to solve that later. But first, let's see if he spends 7,000 here. You see, he's saying to be reimbursed 7,000 because our amount advanced is empty. That hidden variable is empty. We need to figure out why coming from the cash advance leg that became empty. It's not supposed to be. It's not supposed to be. To track that, let's go this way. To quickly track where that problem is, let's go to our subform common fields for this. Remember, we had the amount advanced. So let's change it from being a hidden variable to a text box. And we can see at what point it became empty. So let's save and start a new case right from the cash advance leg. Okay, so this time around, let's say is requesting for 10,500. And then the reason would be purchase of a chair, a plastic chair. Okay. Everything looks good here. Let's submit. And then let's sign it as Audu Bako. at this point, the amount advanced is still not populated because it's only populated at the finance officer disbursement task. Okay. So let's approve this so that we can go forward. And now let's sign in as Adeola Adeoye, the finance person, and go to unassigned. Now if we open this and claim it, so amount advanced figures is there, but the amount advanced is empty. So can you see that now? So that is coming from the fact that, so I think I know where the problem is now. Remember that we had this trigger to preset the amount advanced. We are setting the commas, but we are not setting the one without commas. So we need to copy this. So that's where the issue is. And this will be amount advanced will be amount request equal to amount requested. It's a float. So amount, let's see, for a float, what do we use? We use @hash. Okay. Let's DD this amount requested. So we know so it has a value. Okay, so if it has a value, remember we said if it were empty and it's already populated the amount advanced, it trigger will fire, but this if block will no longer fire because our amount advanced comma already has a value. So what we'll do is to unset it to correct the situation for just this case. So at that, let's unset it so that this if block can fire. Okay, so reload frame. So you see now that it has a value. So that solves the problem. You can go back for future cases. We no longer need this one. We no longer need that. Okay, save. And then we can now go to our Dynaform, go to our common fields for the cash advance. Then this can turn back to a hidden field since we have been able to solve the problem. So we drag a hidden field back here and select it. And we save this. And once we reload frame here, this field here should vanish. Okay. So this is it. So the challenge we're having, so I will submit this now. And of course, it goes to the initiation task of the expense level. So let's log in now as Anu Bello. Let's use the 10,000 case. So to be very sure that we need to check our code again to see where we are making the mistake. Okay, it appears we missed the hash for the pound. That's where the issue is coming from. Same thing here, same thing here. You can see how a little mistake can cause us problems. So let's save this. So if I spend 10,500, then this should be 0 and 0 because there's nothing to reimburse or nothing to refund. Now, if I spend less than what I was advanced, 10,000, then I need to refund the organization 500. If I spend more than that, let's say 11,000, then I need to be reimbursed by the organization to the tune of 500. So this is working now. Let's go to the 7,000 case and see. So if we spend the whole of 7,000 then is 0, 0. But if we spend more, say 9,000, then we are to be reimbursed by the organization to the amount or tune of 2,000. If we spend less, say 3,000, then we need to refund the organization 4,000. So this is working now. We'll save. Now, if it were a fresh case, then because there's no amount advanced here, then whatever is typed here by the person, 2,000 or 25,000, becomes the amount the company will reimburse the employee. So that line of code, we can confirm and verify that that line of code is working. But there's something else I want us to see. We see that this supporting documents, multiple file upload control is set to required. What of if the line item does not have a receipt and it's just one? Then this should not be required. So we need to address that by going back to our JavaScript, where we were targeting the amount column on the grid. So now we will target the receipts column. So we no longer need all these console of this, we can remove them. So now we want to, let's see. Yes. We want to target the receipt column of the grid. Okay. So let's say a new variable called check counts. We want to see how many of those checkboxes are actually checked. We want to count how many of them are checked. So, we initialize the variable with a 0 value, and then we want to know the initialize another variable called, let's call it num rows, really number of rows on the grid. Now there should be, let's see, is there a method that gives us the number of rows on the grid? Yes, see this? It returns the number of rows in the grid. All you need to do is to target the grid ID and then add this get row. So let's copy this. That's the grid, target it using jQuery. And then let's, according to what we have here, call the get rows function. We'll get rows function and we'll put that there. Okay. Now the next thing we'll do, we use a for loop. So for var rule, no, the first rule in any grid, ProcessMaker grid has an index of 1. So they were starting from 1, where the value of rule is less or equal to num rows, the total number of rows in the grid, and then we increment row plus plus. And then what do we want to do? Sorry, undo. What do we want to do? We'll say check counts, which is the name of our variable. Is equal to checkout plus get the value of what we have from the grid at that. So let's copy this. So let me explain what I'm trying to do here. So I get the value. I want to get the value. How do I use the get value method for a grid? We'll go back up, and look for, I'm still on grids. We want to address, where is it, get value. Yeah. So get value, but we need it for a grid. Yeah, so this is the grid get value. So we pass in the row and the column, where row is the row number and column is the column number. Okay. So we come here. The row, of course, is the variable row. That's the row number. And the column. We know the receipts column on is the third column. So we put 3 there. Okay. Now, if it is checked, it will be a value of 1. But if it's unchecked, it will be a value of 0. So we need to pass this as an integer. So pass int. So this should work. And then we then check the value of check count. Check the value of the check count and say if it is still 0, we use a ternary operator here. If it's still 0, then we want our supporting documents, we want to disable validation on our supporting documents. So let's not make the same mistake we made just now by forgetting the hash or the pound symbol. So I think we called it supporting documents, but I'm not too sure. Well, let's check disable validation. Okay, so let's save this. This is line 40. What did we call this guy? It's ID, supporting document. So copy that. Find line 40. So this is what should be here. Else, copy. So we need to remove this semicolon there. Else, we want to enable validation here. Then we can put our semicolon at the end now. So this should work. Let's save. Let's save. Let's go back to our form and let's reload frame. Okay, so there's no issue with our JavaScript, no syntax error. So we can preview the form. But when you start, you see that supporting documents is required. Now, the moment I add an amount here, because I've not selected receipt attached, this is no longer required. The moment you decide that a receipt is attached or you add a new rule and add an amount, or without even adding an amount, you select a receipt is attached, this becomes required. If no receipt is attached, this is not required. So that's what that code is doing for us. So I think with this, we are good. With all the JavaScript we've written so far, we are good for the JavaScript needed for our initiation form. We're good to go. So are there other triggers we need to add here? So we are good with these first triggers. But remember, go back to our initiation form for the CA arrow leg. We needed to determine the supervisor, and then we need to add comments to case notes, then approve the sign-offs. So let's go down there now. So back to our initiation task for our ERO leg, we need to also reuse this supervisor UID. And what this supervisor UID is actually doing is to set these two variables. If the request is coming from the CARO leg, then these variables will already have a value. They will already be set. Else, if it's a fresh case starting from the expense retirement leg, then this value will be empty. So we use this as a condition on when this trigger should fire. We say if supervisor ID is equal to nothing, then this trigger should fire. Okay. Then the next as usual, we can always reuse our add comments to case notes. That is fine. But then the update approval signups. But where we now need to look at that would be, let's see, does our update sign off cover? Oh, so it doesn't cover yet. So you see that while we've added the case for the tax QIDs, we have not done the sign off. So we'll need to copy this and paste it here. But this time, remember, we are adding the suffix ER. Okay. We do the same thing for supervisor. ER. Same thing for finance. And do ER. Okay. So I think we are good on this trigger. Okay. Now, if we go back to where we're doing our testing, if you check, you see that there's no case label. There's no case label for this fresh request on the expense retirement leg. But the case labels still remain cash advance, even for the ones coming from cash advance, right? Remember when we set, how did we set our case labels? We use the case label property of the task, and we set this case label. And where did we set this variable? So let's go to check. If stick case label here, then we should still use case label here. Let's see, stick case label. But we need to determine the value. When it's the cash advance requisition leg, the case label should be different from when it is the expense leg. So if a request starts from the cash requisition leg, its case label should be different from the request starting from an expense retirement leg. And a cash advance requisition request that moves into the expense retirement leg should also have a different, or its case label should look different. So the question would be, where did we set that value for the case label? So we already had a set case label trigger. So what will now happen is to, same way we set it here after the Dynaform. I think it's good to set, we'll come down, sorry, let's edit it first. Let's see what we can edit in it to achieve what we want to achieve. Okay. So we're already using the task UID. We're already using the task UID. So what would I do? I would want to add a prefix. So I want a situation where the case label will be different from what I have here. So instead of cash advance by name of employee 4, then the amount requested, I want the name of the employee first, and then a hyphen, then cash advance and put the amount. Then if it goes into the expense retirement leg, then expense retirement, then I put the amount. So this is what I'm talking about. So let's set a prefix and say prefix is equal to the employee name. Let's copy that. Sorry, this is wrong. Should be small or lowercase characters. So prefix is this, and I'll concatenate it with a space and a hyphen. So that is the first part. Now, once it's in the initiation task of the cash advance requisition leg, I want case label to equal to prefix, this prefix here. Prefix in concatenation with cash advance, and then the amount requested commas. So I'll do this, something like this. Correct. So it should be like this. Cash advance. Then if you're using USD, you can even put for a case like Naira, If it's USD, we could put USD here, USD, so that it's we know what you can pull that, or you can leave it, you can remove it. If it's Naira, you put NGN, and so on and so forth. Now, for the initiation task of the expense retirement leg, identified by or depicted by this task QID, then there's something we would then do. We would say we need to start with an if statement. If, remember when we used, so do something like this. If amount advanced, commas, if amount advanced is set, then it means that the request time from the cash advance requirement leg. So it's a matter of just putting amount advanced commas. If amount advanced commas is equal to an empty string, then it means that the whole thing is a fresh case at the expense retirement leg. So all I now need to do is, I can use something like this, copy. But this time around, it will be expense, and this will be retirement. What was wrong with expense retirement? No, it will be amount expense now. Remember, we have a variable that holds the total expenditure, amount expense. So it will be that. Okay. However, if it's not a fresh, fresh request on the expense retirement leg, but something coming from the cash advance requisition leg, then the case label should look like this. Case label is prefix. This first one should be there. Copy it, paste it. Then we'll concatenate it with don't use a hyphen space to separate it from this. So something like this. So this is what it should look like. So let's save this. Now let's try it out. These two are coming from the sorry. Well, after we've done that, we should position it. So position before it loads at the cash advance request initiation, and also after the Dynaform, so that it's able to capture whether it's a cash advance, then also capture the amounts requested commas after the Dynaform. We come to the initiation task of our expense retirement leg and do the same thing. We set case label here, and then also after the Dynaform to capture the total amount expensed. So let's test it out now. If we open this one back and then go back to inbox, you see that the label has changed. It's now showing the cash advance and then showing the retirement value. But because we have not submitted the form, it doesn't know the value for the cash expense is not set yet. So that's why it's empty. Let's go to our draft. This that is empty, no case label. And then let's open it and then go back without submitting. You see now it's in cash retirement. There's no cash advance in the case label because this has no cash advance history at all. This case has no cash advance requisition history. So that is how you get this done. So by this, I think we are good with everything we need to set for our initiation task at the expense retirement leg. So we can move on now to submit this. So for this particular scenario, we say it's launch for the board meeting, launch for board meeting. And the person spent 25 food packs of 18,500 and water, let's say for water, spent 4,750. Then drinks spent 10,500. So let's assume that he only has receipts for 2. So we need to upload the receipts. So automatically you can see that this person is to be reimbursed 33,750. Okay. Okay, so let's assume that these figures for USD are quite exorbitant. So let's assume that we are dealing with Naira. So let's quickly come back to our set labels trigger and turn this to NGN. Copy NGN, NGN, NGN. Okay, so back to what we are testing now. And we can check whether our comment is working. We can say report submitted. Okay. Now, before I submit, there's still one more thing we've not done. Email notifications. Okay. And for supervisors to be notified, I would prefer to set the email notification at this task, at the supervisor task itself. Okay. We'll set notify the assigned user to this task. And for us to be able to do that, we need to set the email templates, correct? Okay, so that's one more thing we've not done. It's good that we just remember them. So we need to we already have notify employee ERO. That is when a request moves from the cash advance leg to the expense retirement leg. Okay. We have a notify supervisor CA. So let's do a notify supervisor ER. So let's copy this, create, paste, notify supervisor ER, save it. Then I also need to create a notify finance ER. Notify finance ER. Okay. Then we need to notify rejected ER. If the supervisor rejects the case, the employee needs to be notified with an email as well. So notify rejected ER, we create that as well. Okay, so now we need to set the contents of each. Okay, so for notify supervisor CA, that was already set. If we go to the the rich text, we have something like this. So I'll just go to the HTML, copy everything here. And then go to the notify supervisor ER, go to the HTML, paste, apply. Then go to the rich text to edit to suit what I want. So I want to say the expense retirement reports So the expense retirement report submitted by then the employee name. For this time around, what I need here is the expense. So amount expensed. Let's just hope that I'm correct. Let's go to, because that can cause trouble. Amount expense, copy it from there. Paste. Okay. So amount expensed has been sent to your queue on ProcessMaker. Kindly log in and access the case from your inbox. Okay. So this is looking good. This is looking good. Now, to handle the rejected, we just go to the HTML of the one existing for the cash advance, copy, and then open HTML for the ER1 version. Let's paste. We'll edit to taste later. Same thing happens for that of the finance. Open the one for the cash advance, copy what is there, and open the one for the expense retirement and paste. Okay. Now, for the values we'll basically be needing, like we did for the supervisor ER, would be this guy, this amount expensed, right? So we copy, that's the value we'll mostly be needing. So if we go to the notify a finance ER and we open that, the rich text will be high finance officers, then this will change, of course, to amount expensed. Then the cash advance requests here will turn to expense retirement reports. Then it's also initiated, it will be submitted by. Okay, that is that. Then the next one will be the rejected now. Rejected ER. So let's check that. So for the rejected ER, behind employee name, your cash, so this one now, instead of cash advance this, it will be expense retirement case this for, then this will change to amount expense has been rejected and returned to your queue. So everything here is okay now. Then one more email notification we would like to have will be at the end here, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So first, we want to set the notification that supervisors should receive. So go to tax property, go to notifications, notify the assigned user to this task. And we will come back here for, remember, how did we set the subjects? So let's say yes. How did we set the subjects for the CA leg? We used something like this. Let's copy that and paste on our notepad. So we basically set supervisor approval for blah, 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 blah. That is what we did. Let's check for the finance. What did we put there? So assign user to this task. This is what we did. So that's what we used. So for the supervisor task of our expense retirement leg, what we'll now say would be supervisor approval for expense retirement we just say expense reports. Yeah, same thing here. We just copy the same thing and put here. Okay, so undo rather. Undo. We have to paste it here. Wow. I think I made a mistake. Just copy it all over again. Okay. So that's what we have. So I'll copy this one. Let's cut it rather and come to the properties of this task. Go to notifications. We want to notify the assigned user to this, and the subject we paste there now. And then we use an HTML template, and the template we want to use is notify supervisor ER. That solves that. Then for the finance officers, we'll go to notifications as well. Notify the assigned user to this task. Let's copy what we have here. Copy. And then we paste this. And then we select HTML and we notify finance ER. We save that. Okay. So, well, when a case is rejected, so this is where we come to this in the first task here, or the initiation task to set the properties. And this time around, we'll say notify the user to this task. And this will change a bit to be expense retirement case. And we could, yeah, just let's use this. Let's use this copy. So we'll put this here. And of course, we use the HTML template. Notify rejected ER. Okay. Then finally, once the finance officer is done with processing the expense report, you want an email to be sent to the employee. Yep. So for that to happen, we need to check. We need to first of all set this end event type to email message, and then we can set its properties now. So let's check. Did we register the employee email variable? Yeah, we did. So we insert that to the employee, and we'll now say expense reports for whatever that was expensed, amount expensed. Let's make it equal to. So let's make this original type as well at equal to, and then this one for amount expensed, then we'll say processed. Okay. So here we can say hi at, sorry, let's use our employee. We search for employee. This is employee name. And let's use the at equal to. Okay, so employee name, double click on that. Then we put this. And we can say it's very tiny, but bear with me. We can say your expense retirement for then the amount expense now. So let's go to our variable selector again. We're using original type. So search for expense. So this amount expensed has been processed by finance. See details below. So we add an horizontal line there, and then we say amounts to reimburse, put a column, then amounts reimbursed. Then we put an empty line. Now amount to refund. Now amount refunded. So for this, so you can select all and change to area size 12. So something like this. And we can set this to make it bulleted and this to bulleted as well. For uniformity, let's turn this to uppercase R. So amount to reimburse. So let's search for, sorry, this is the variable selector we need. To reimburse, as it. Let's use this. Then reimbursed itself, which is amount reimbursed. So search for rem. Let's use original type. Rem. So I need amount reimbursed. This is the one I need. So for to refund, take original type again and type to ref, and this is to refund. And then amount refunded, select original type again and put ref. This is amount refunded, select that. So this should be it. And you can save this. So that handles the emails. So let's see, we set the emails that the employee will receive if there's a rejection. We set the email the supervisor should receive if the employee submits the report. We set the email that the finance officer should receive if the supervisor approves, and then the final email for case completion. We set that. Okay. So with that set, we can submit this now. Submit these reports. See, it is well. Then these other ones that were from the cash advance requisition leg, let's take the first one. So for this, the person spent for a wireless mouse and keyboard set, the person spent the exact amount of 7,000, but no receipts attached. So you can see there's nothing to be reimbursed and nothing to be refunded. Okay. And so let's also type report submitted here. And for this other one, the person spent less than. So the plastic chair, one plastic chair. The person then ended up spending 9,000. Let's say there's a receipt for this. So he is to refund the company 1,500. So let's select, we'll be selecting a PDF. Let's select an image this time around. Let's assume that is the image of the receipt. Then submit. Let's type, just put submitted. Submit this. So this task is done. We will continue in our next session looking at the supervisor task, how we can wrap that up, and as well as the finance task. Bye for now.